Hello everyone. Since this is either a highlight, a standalone book, or the first episode in a series, I'm jumping in to remind you what the rules are for this podcast. First rule is, no real people stories. That means that any details from our own lives are merely anecdotal, we do not read books about real people, and we are not reading historical fiction. The second rule is that we are basing our analyses off of how the author treats characters and what they put them through. We are not judging the accuracy of the trauma, the accuracy of any actual conditions that may be portrayed, nor the authenticity of a character's reaction to that trauma or that particular condition. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The hosts are not trained professionals, and their opinions come solely from personal experience. In this episode, we discuss fictional depictions of trauma and violence that may not be suitable for all audiences. Please take care of yourselves. Specific content warnings for each episode can be found in the show notes. Events in the media are discussed in approximate order of escalation. This episode contains spoilers.
Today we will be discussing The Moon is a Harsh Mistress by Robert A. Heinlein, a book about a revolution on the moon and how they got there.
Hi, I'm Nicole.
And I'm Robin, and welcome to Books That Burn. It's sci-fi, which means Nicole's the one who picked it, and I was pleasantly surprised by how much I really, really liked this book.
Have I picked all the sci-fi ones we've done?
Both of them? Yes.
Oh. Wait, no, we've done more than...
Regardless. You've picked the sci-fi.
Okay.
Yeah,
I've also picked a lot of the fantasy.
Oh, no, we're pretty even on fantasy, but if it's sci-fi...
okay, it's always me. Alright, I gotcha.
Like, dystopian in the future with different tech isn't the same thing as sci-fi.
That's true, and I think you've picked those.
Yeah,
okay.
I picked those. Yes. So anyway, factions. We have Mannie. We have Mike, also known as Mycroft, also known as Michelle. We have Wyo. Full name Wyoming Knot, with a K. It's fun. It's cool spellings. Lots of puns. Lots of being upset about puns. We have Prof. We have Mannie's family. We have the Lunar Authority. General comrades, most of whom then become governmental. And we have Terrans in mostly government roles.
Well, we get a bunch of random interactions with, like, random citizens.
Yeah.
We do get that for a little bit.
A little bit. Okay, so, for our minor character spotlight, in general, we pick something that is lower in... usually in our episodes, our topics ramp up. The topic for this one is rape and murder.
Yeah.
The way that it is handled in the book is the only thing that lets this be the lowest thing on the order of escalation in the book.
Although, to be fair, we put the minor character first no matter what.
Yeah, we always put the minor character first. We just want to say, hey, we understand that this is possibly the biggest trauma in the book, and the only reason we say possibly is because of how it is handled.
Yeah, now, so we know that we have and will again cover books with rape and with murder in them. However, and we don't want to have the same topic over and over and over and have you guys just be listening to our opinions on the same thing forever. But this book does a very, very good job of having this happen in a very, I don't even know what the right word is, a very
purposeful, I don't want to quite use the word calculated isn't quite right.
It's not calculated in the story.
But for the author, it's calibrated.
Yes, calibrated is good. It is a calibrated trauma that is absolutely a thing in the plot, but the way the wording is and the way it's handled in the text, this was less like this. We're gonna read a quote in a second. This is all you get. There are no other details. Nothing.
If you want to skip the quote, then just press your go forward button and you'll miss very minimal commentary.
It is a single sentence.
And it is, not satisfied with raping her, they abused her in other ways and killed her.
End quote. That's it.
That's it. That's the whole thing. We have a little bit of background. We know that it was 6 soldiers, and that's it. Thank you for joining us again. If you skipped ahead,
welcome back.
We're done with that description.
Yeah. And honestly, and we're not that we're gonna say anything terrible, but our discussing of it right now is honestly, no joke. If you're listening to us right now and going, man, okay, I can handle this conversation, I don't think I could handle the book. Our conversation is probably more traumatic to listen to than the book section was to read.
And we try to not have that be the case.
It's so carefully handled.
We try to have that not be the case, but since most of how it's so careful is that it gets very low word count.
Yeah.
Us talking about it at all ups that.
We are spending more time and more words on it than the book does. Full stop. No, it's not even close. Just by virtue of it being a topic that we talk about for about 10 minutes, we are spending more effort on it than you would have to endure in the book. But so honestly, anyway, that's part of why it made our list, because it's so delicately done and it's so quickly done. And there's no details, there's no objectifying of the victim, there's no descriptions of anything.
Yep. And nothing. The first thing that we are told is her name and her background, and then a little bit of context, and then the sentence that we read.
And we get no...
That's it.
We get no physical description of her at all. We get who she is as a person, her name, and what she does, and that's it.
And I think, who her parents were?
Yeah.
But who her parents were in the sense of, were they from Luna or Terra?
Yeah, we get, their citizenship, technically, I guess, kind of.
Yeah.
But that's it. But again, those are very humanizing details. There's nothing about this that dehumanizes her even a little bit.
The only pushback I would give on that characterization is that the very small amount of time spent for the text and the way her death is immediately politicized is a kind of dehumanization, but in comparison to how most victims of rape are treated in a police procedural. If you compare it to a TV show police procedural where you have a victim and then you spend 45 minutes finding out what happened, this gives more dignity, less stress, and less trauma in the depiction of it than a murder mystery story. Yeah, but I don't want to characterize it as it's handled so well. I'm like,
I mean, it is though. Here's what I would say.
Handled well.
It is handled well by the author, which is what we're talking about. It is true. It is true that the event in the story ends up being the catalyst for a major part of the plot. But even then, what happens is it's not the catalyst where somebody took this thing and said, well, let's start this other thing with it. No, they were already building and looking for that other thing.
They were waiting for an excuse to do things they were already planning to do.
I wouldn't even say excuse. I would say opening almost. And it is true that the actual events that were specifically triggered by this event,
they didn't in a happen. One event causes another sense. In this case.
Yes. So the actual things that were triggered by this event were not somebody manipulating the event.
No, it was just manipulating the coverage.
They were manipulating the coverage, but there was, I guess we can just say it, because
yeah.
I'm almost trying to edge around spoilers, and there's no reason to do that. So, This
book has been out since the 60s. You've had the time.
Well,
it's on the back cover.
If you knew about it.
It's on the back cover.
So the rape actually triggered mass riots of people being upset at the group that had included the rapists. Mm-hmm. That is what happened.
Yes.
And then the people who were trying to overthrow the authority that included those rapists took advantage of the fact that the people were already rioting to then push to actually overthrow the government.
Yeah.
So I want to push back, I guess, on your pushback a little bit, and just say that I don't think that it was a case of this event happened and so it was then taken advantage of, because nobody looked at this and then took that story and then made it news. It was gonna be news no matter what.
I mean, excuse in the very literal, they were planning to do a thing, and then this was what they said was the reason.
For it, yeah.
This is what they said was the reason for doing the thing, but it was not their reason for doing the thing, otherwise they would not already have been so well planned and ready to take advantage of it.
Right. And also something I think is important too is that I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. This was not a case of a woman is raped and murdered and people use that to incite a riot. Mm-hmm. This is a case of a woman was raped and murdered and everyone who heard about it was ready to beat down the door of the person who did it. This was not, it was not used to drum up a reaction. That reaction was there. People were upset and angry that somebody had been treated this way.
And I want to take a minute and talk briefly about why it was such a, why they rioted so quickly, contrasting it with how, the setup for this world, which I think is really, really cool, and I like it a lot. And I know this is kind of a dark podcast, but this idea was, really, really cool. And I'm an author in the 60s wrote this. I am so excited. You don't have to be, terrible just because it was the past. I like this. Anyway, so the basic ethos is on the moon, on Luna, women are outnumbered around 10-1. Therefore,
it was 10-1 when the colony was founded. It is close to...
It's now 2-1?
Yes.
Okay, so when it very first started and when the start of this culture happened, they were outnumbered 10-1. The ratio is a little better now, but it remains. Therefore, they are precious. Therefore, they have all say in relationships. Not in the sense that they could force somebody, but in the sense that nothing will happen if the woman doesn't enthusiastically consent. Yeah. They don't use that phrase because it's the 60s, but that is what is being described with more words, is that enthusiastic consent is required by the woman.
Yeah.
And, any other partners that she may have, female or male, will have nothing to say about it.
Yeah. There are scenes in this book of married women kissing, or even married men, kissing other people, and a married woman kissing someone else with their husband right there, and that it's her choice. It's her call. It's almost like the entire settlement, the entire colony, the entire settlement on the moon, on Luna, is everyone is an open relationship if they consent to that person. Well, kind of, almost like
there are monogamists. There are
monogamists, but as far as a society, there's very much just this.
There's monogamists. Prof seems pretty ace. It's hard to tell if he's ace or just older,
or just the one older man in the group.
Yeah. It's hard to know if he's ace or just like done trying to have relationships. He refers to himself as monogamous, but he's not with anybody. So,
that's fair. But I mean, but there's very much this. When I say open, what I mean is if two people
not possessive.
Yeah, if two people consent to doing something with each other, 0 other people on the planet are going to have an issue. And honestly, the only people that might even say something is like their other partners might say, hey, tell us if you're sleeping with someone else instead of coming home tonight, because that's like courteous to let us know that you won't be here. We'll miss you. You know, like, keep the head of your household informed that you're safe and didn't die in an accident somewhere. Just say that you're sleeping somewhere else. Like, there's a thing where, like, the head of our main character, Mannie's household, basically says, like, hey, if you're sleeping with someone else, please tell me. But then go do it.
So that we can invite them to dinner.
Right. Like, let me know so that I can get to know them too, or that we could, but there's no jealousy, there's no possessiveness, there's no, this is my person, like that doesn't happen. There is rejection. There is people saying no to interaction. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But in every single situation of a loony with another loony, that is what they call themselves.
Yes, it is.
Clarifying. That is the literal official term in the book. They are loonies who live on Luna, and that is their self-identified phrasing. Every single time that you see an interaction there, it is always either full consent or full respect for a no. No in between, no hedging, no, oh, come on, no nothing. It's great.
And there is one instance where an Earthling doesn't understand this, and the loonies who are all in the relationship with the woman in question, there's like 3 or 4 of them at least, they basically, the main character very narrowly helps this Earthling avoid being killed because he disrespected her not giving enthusiastic consent. I'm not sure if she said no, or if I think it was he tried to do something physically without her having said yes.
He tried to pull her in and kiss her without her having already agreed to it.
Yes. There was not an enthusiastic consent.
Yeah, it wasn't even that she rejected him. It was just that
she hadn't said yes.
She hadn't said yes, and that was it. That was the end of the conversation, and this guy almost died for it because that's how this goes in this situation. And then contrast that with the actual rapists with our topic here, who are from Earth. And Robin, you had pointed out a very good point.
After it happens, the officials are upset that the soldiers weren't given their own women, because then this wouldn't have happened, which is very terrible and makes me wish that we could swear on this version of the podcast. If you want to hear us very occasionally swear, support us on Patreon. But it's
literally, I do want to be explicit here, and I did put this in our content warning. The contrast here is between a society who will kill the person who tries to force you to do anything, even if it's just that you haven't been enthusiastic in your consent, versus
that the other person wasn't enthusiastic in their consent. Or you're not killing someone for
you're killing someone if the person they're trying to get with didn't say yes. Versus a squad of, call them what they are, prison wardens, space police from Earth, who need their own sex slaves so that they don't rape local women. The dynamic contrast between those two groups is like miles wide and deep. It's so incredibly different, and it's set up in the book very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very good.
Yeah. It is done so well and so memorably that when I went to glance at the text, it took me about 15 seconds to find it, just because
yeah, because it's so quick and it's so clean, and it's just, okay, here's what happened, here's the human being that was injured by it, and we're done. Moving on.
Moving on to Mannie and racism. So, on Luna, people's skin tones and hair color are mentioned in a way that is not tied to race. It is occasionally tied to ethnicity, specifically Chinese, which, to be clear, on the moon, they have a separate term, which is Chinese. As far as we know, that is not a slur. If it is, we're very sorry. This is the term in the book. Not aware of it being one, in reality. And it is not in the book used as a slur. The reason that it's called out separately is because Luno Hoko, Lunar Hong Kong, is a substantial segment of Luna, and it is filled with people who are descended from people who came to the moon from China. But it is not exclusively that. It just... Specifically,
people who were imprisoned / deported to the moon by the Chinese government.
Okay, that's true.
So that doesn't... And it actually does say, and I'm not going to try and find the page right now, it actually does say that is not even mostly Chinese.
Right.
It's, honestly, it was a lot of, like, China was conquering different nations and then sent their people away to the moon.
Yeah, so,
like, there's some Chinese, but really, it's Lunar Hong Kong because it was China who created that particular part of the settlement.
Yeah.
But as far as, like, the ethnicity goes, it's a whole bunch of people that were just the people that, in fiction, this version of China wanted off of Earth.
Yeah.
Which was not their citizens, because they like their citizens, essentially.
Yeah. So
it was everybody else.
Chinese is used frequently throughout the book, and it's not taking the time. I can't
think of a single...
It's never explicitly about an ethnicity or appearance or anything. It's mostly just, is this person from Lunu Hoko?
Yeah, it's almost a location. It's like calling someone a New Yorker.
Yeah, it's like that.
It's like that.
Yeah, just on the moon.
Or a Yank.
All of this is to say that the book begins to grapple with racism when the narrator briefly is on Earth.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I'm cutting in because I wanna make sure we put something kind of first.
I thought you might.
Here in this conversation. This book does not presuppose that you, the reader, will assume that the narrator is a white man. In fact, this book kind of assumes that you don't care, and that you don't know, and you know that you don't know, and you also are not trying to figure it out. So they set it up where the narrator is Mannie, and he'll describe other people, but he never describes himself. Because when you're thinking through and you're telling a story, nobody in real life looks down and says, "My lily white hands." Like, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Nobody looks at themselves and says, "Ah, my lovely golden skin." Like, that's not a thing that happens in the real world. That is a thing that fiction authors do when they're like, this person isn't white because we know you think white's the default. Like, but this book doesn't do that at all. And so it's just really interesting because we literally see the world through Mannie's eyes, and we see what he is seeing, and he is not staring at his own coloring.
Yep.
At all. And I think that's important, and then, because then you know why us talking about Earth is such a big deal here.
So then when he does go to Earth, he basically gets the, no, where are you really from? When he says his background, because he's like, I'm from Luna? That's kind of the whole point of this. And then they're like, where are your parents from? And he's like, Luna? Like, where are your grandparents from? Earth? What do you,
it's
want?
Really funny, like, he does not know what to do with this. He's like, well, I was born and raised on the moon, and my ancestors were deported there from
somewhere on Earth.
The planet that I'm visiting right now, like, I don't know where. It depends on which ancestor.
And they're like, but which of your four grandparents was from which part of Earth? And then he kind of, like, shuts them down by being like, by saying that his one of his grandmothers was from an area that was repeatedly conquered and pillaged, and all of the stuff that goes along with that. See our previous topic.
Yeah.
And
not for discussion of that.
Hey,
part, but that topic.
Anyway, and like, it doesn't say that she was assaulted and that's how one of his parents exists, but it's like, he doesn't know that it's not.
Yeah, like his family history, as far as he is concerned, is Luna, and that big blue planet down there. And yeah, we've got some fun stories about maybe some ancestors that might have been mine. I don't know. Like, it's just not even what he literally doesn't care.
Yeah.
Because it's not part of his identity. And it's not that he is missing part of his identity. It's that for him, as a lunar, I keep trying to say citizen, as a loony, he can't be a citizen without citizenship.
Yeah.
As a loony, his whole everything is just what existed on the moon. And on the moon, they don't divide people up in those ways.
Yeah.
They just don't care.
It's not that there's no divisions, it's that really isn't one of them.
Yeah, there's other divisions. It's just not this one that we like on Earth.
And it's kind of it's done in this really cool way where it's like a criticism of, did you ever think about how this is really bonkers and we shouldn't be doing this on Earth? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. What?
What are you
doing?
The ribs.
And I'm like, good on you, writer from the 60s.
It's a really good deconstruction almost of it. Mm-hmm. And it's calling how absurd it is in a very, very funny,
like, it matters
to read way.
It matters way more to his identity that he's part of a 90-year-old line marriage. And if you want to know what that is, read the book. We do not have time. It's cool. It's Polly. Read the book. Anyway.
It is healthy polyamory.
In, like, this really cool Luna-specific way. Anyway, so he has this family photo that has, like, all of his family. And, like, all, like, 7, 8 of his, like, husband's wives and things. Like,
I don't remember how many
7 or 8 of each of those. And because his family photo shows clearly, like, multiracial, multi-ethnic, polygamous family, he then gets arrested for polygamy, and then that's like a whole thing. And it's stated in the book that racial prejudice and racism of various types is part of why he was arrested.
Specifically, it states that the person who advocated for his arrest, it was the polyamory, but it was also that his family was clearly a mixed family. And the way they put it was the range of color in the Davis family that was upsetting to that person. Mm-hmm. Like, it wasn't that he was a person of color, it was that his family included people on a spectrum, and how dare they. And it's And also, it's good here when we're talking about, like, essentially cultural differences in the book. He had no idea that anyone would even care about something like that. He showed them his family, the picture that he had of his family, because he loves that picture, and it was precious to him, and he was trying to... Part of his goal was to essentially humanize the Loonies to the Terrans. And so he was showing them his family photo to be like, hey, look, we're just like you guys. And they looked at that polyamorous, multiracial photo and went, what? We hate this. We don't want to be this. How dare you impinge on my identity of you, essentially. And it got him thrown in jail. But it was legitimately for him, it was this positive, like, hey, let me share my family that I love with you. And he had no idea that anyone could possibly look at his photo and have a problem with that.
Yeah.
And it draws a very sharp line of contrast.
And part of why we're talking about it as a trauma is because it goes from, like, literally not a thing where he has lived for however many decades. We don't know how old he is, but there's a point where someone's like, are you, like, 22? And he's like, I have been married longer than that. But other than that, we don't get how old he is. But
he's at least in his 40s or 50s.
Yeah.
A minimum, just from other context things.
And so, for, like, the first time at, like, age, say it's even just 50-something, someone's like, did you know that your family is multiracial and we hate that? And he's like, what's... racial?
He's like,
race.
Right. He's like,
you Terrans are not okay, are you?
And even the way they describe it, he even says, he doesn't even say multiracial. He says a range of color.
Yeah, he doesn't...
Like, he doesn't have the vocabulary for that racist idea. Like, he doesn't have those words.
Like, we know that that's what the author is critiquing, but I really appreciate that it is a critique, and like this book is not dystopian, but it's pitching Earth in the 2070s as a dystopia in the background of all the stuff happening on Luna. And the most,
it's real good.
Like, troubling dystopian things are the stuff that they didn't change and assume is just the same. If what was happening in the 60s projected unchanged, well, 1960s projected unchanged until the 2070s. And that stuff feels it's just very good. Because reality is terrible. Moving on to Mannie with disability and ableism. Specifically, loss of a limb. So, we have the briefest backstory that he is missing an arm. I believe it's his left one.
It's his left one. It was cut off by a laser cutter that was mishandled. Mm-hmm. And we don't actually know if he mishandled it or if somebody else did something. We don't actually know. There isn't really a lot of details. Because, again, like I've said in previous topics, this is all through Mannie's eyes, and Mannie doesn't care that you know why he lost his arm. He just cares that he is functional with prosthetics. Like, that's it. Like, when he does or doesn't have an arm attached, that's what matters.
Like, he'll mention it like he has a social arm because, the social arm is the one that looks like a flesh arm.
Or as close as you can get it.
Yeah, as close as you can get it.
Yeah.
So he has different arms. He has them numbered. And they've got different functions and features, and, like, one has a recorder, and one, like, can solder? Like, I don't know if one of them can solder, but it's that kind of an idea.
I think its number 6 arm just has a lot of engineering, and I hesitate to say chemical, but a lot of just, like, functional tools that he uses day to day. So I think it does have a solder. I think it has various screwdrivers, things... that
whenever
he uses on the job. He's a mechanical engineer.
whenever he has to do something that is basically just dependent on he had this tool because it's in his arm, it mentions what arm he is using.
Yeah.
Or if it's like, I'm changing clothes, we're about to go to a social function, I put on the social arm. Like,
I think arm number 4 has the recorder. Arm number 6 has most of his gadgets that he uses for just work and jobs. I know he has number 2. Is number 2 his social arm?
I do not remember. I was not
either.
super worried. I just know he really likes number 6.
Number 6, well, he is, like I said, he is a mechanical engineer. Number 6 has all of his mechanical engineering gadgets. It's his fave. It's the one he uses at work, day to day, making his living. So, yeah, number 6 is his favorite arm. It's most versatile for him.
So anyway, we are super excited about his arm, you can tell. It's got just enough, like, weird, nerdy detail that it's like, is it number 3 or number 6 or number 2? But as it matters,
and it's so specific.
As it matters for this particular thing, there is some, he is missing an arm, and on Luna, he is generally not treated as disabled.
Yeah, well, to be fair, on Luna, he generally has something attached to hit the remainder of that limb, and is doing something with, like...
It seemed as though he has a shoulder, but not much below it. Had that kind of a feel.
The mental image that I had when I was younger reading this, as well as rereading it this week, was that he has a shoulder and maybe like, you know, where your shoulder muscle stops and like your tricep and bicep kind of take over.
Yeah. My
mental image is that that's kind of the cutoff. So he has like a full shoulder and like full rotator cuff. And then just clear, like
he's
no lower arm, most of not his upper arm. Yeah, again, like he's just functional. It's fine.
Yeah, he's not worried about it. He's not describing exactly how much of his limb is missing.
No.
We're guessing because that's based on
that's
how
the visual
he
from the
talks about
text.
it.
Yeah, well, he talks about like connecting them, and it's always arm. It's never shoulder. It's never. Like, he never talks about the joint locking into, like, we don't get details like that. We just get, like, he puts on this arm, and it's very... Well, he does say his stump a couple times.
Yeah.
Which is, I think that's why I have the mental image of him still having, like, that full shoulder and, like, a piece of his upper arm, is because he calls it a stump.
So then we get to the first instance, and basically only instance in the whole book, of him not having an arm being a disability, because I don't feel comfortable using the term disability for the rest of the book, because that's not how it's couched, that's not how it's portrayed, it's
not
like,
how he thinks of it, which is important.
Yeah, you've got some things that you're going to say as
I do
on Luna, like after Earth. I want to say the Earth bit, and then
go for
it. So when he travels to Earth and is packed in the hotshot, he takes certain drugs consensually for the flight to wake him up at a particular time, but have him be asleep before that. And when he wakes up, he finds that he had packed 2 of his arms in the storage, and then his arm had been removed after he was drugged.
Third arm. He had a third arm attached and 2 packed in his stuff.
Yep, so the arm that he had put on him, because it was the most needed for the part where he is supposed to wake up and do things in the middle of this flight, his arm was removed, is not with him on the ship, and appears to have been removed. I thought it was on the ship with him. Nicole thought it wasn't. That detail isn't important. The main part is he can't use it. It is packed. It is somewhere, either inaccessible or not even on this vessel, and it means that in a life or death scenario where he is trying to do things to help him die, to help Prof not die, to help Stu not die. Stu's the other person with him. Mm-hmm. Him, Prof, and Stu. Trying to help them all, like, be alive. Wait, is Stu with him?
No, Stu's been on Earth for...
Sorry, Stu's already on Earth. He's trying to keep Prof alive.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got to give him, like, certain drugs so that it'll, like, start his heart, and he like does them all even though he thinks Prof is dead. It's like, cool and super dramatic. And he's doing all of this, cursing the person who took off his arm. He even says, "Was sorry I didn't know name of my helping friend. Could have cursed him better." Because someone tried to be helpful and instead made everything so much worse. Someone removing his arm to clean it meant that he could have died. It took him 2 to 3 times longer, minimum. It doesn't put an exact number on it. From the description, it sounds like 2 to 3 times longer to do things.
At least,
he's in this dangerous situation. And that is the first time that for him, not, in the text, not having his arm is some kind of disability, because until then he was completely able to do everything he wanted to do and able to do some really cool stuff that other people who just had bio arms weren't able to do. Like, he's like extra able for the rest of the book. And then some terrible clueless person does this thing, and it sets him up to possibly die, and then once he does make it to Earth, it means that he doesn't have a thing he was counting on to do a bunch of stuff in a very important way. That is my spiel about how it's handled on Earth. You had a little bit to say about the ableism on the moon, because you have read this more time, and to be frank, this is my first time through. You're talking about stuff that was subtle enough that I missed it.
Okay, so we were both wrong because I just found the passage.
Okay.
All right, so I'm just going to read this paragraph. He's in a hospital being talked to by a nurse on Earth. She asked how I felt. Told her I was right, just hungry. Sister, did you see some prosthetic arms in our luggage? She had, and I felt better with number 6 in place. Had selected it and number 2 and social arm as enough for trip. Number 2 was presumably still in complex. I hope someone was taking care of it. But number 6 is all around most useful arm. With it and social one, I'd be okay. Oh wait, no, I was right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he had planned to have 3 arms. One of them was taken off his body without his consent, and he assumed was just still on the moon somewhere.
And it's the number 6 arm that's missing?
No.
That'll be missing when he wakes up?
I just paged away from the... Oh, there it is. Number 2 is not his social arm. I was wrong. So he had selected number 6, number 2, and his social arm.
Mm-hmm. Number
2 is presumably still on the moon. Number 6 was equipped, and he had his social arm with him. So
and then when he wakes up in the hot shot,
he has no arm and is struggling to be one-handed.
Right. So I think the 6 was packed somewhere.
Yeah. 6 and his social. Number 6 and his social arm were packed, which was the plan. And he had wanted to have number 2 attached.
Oh, okay. All right.
They took number 2 off his body. And good question. Also, this means that I had misremembered when we were talking before the podcast. Social arm is not the same as number 2, which actually makes me wonder if you're right that number 1 is the one that looks the most realistic. I wonder if number 1 is social arm.
Oh, yeah, because there's nothing labeled number 1. We had this discussion before we started recording. No, none of the arms are labeled as number 1, but most of the other numbers get mentioned, at least in a cursory way.
Yeah.
And so he just refers repeatedly to the social arm. And so maybe that's number 1, like the very first prosthetic he got was the one to make other people feel better.
Well, I would argue it's probably not just to make other people feel better.
Okay, sci-fi, it probably can, like, move fingers and things.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's probably just the closest thing to just replacing his functional initial arm.
And all the other ones give him, like, upgrades.
Right. Like you're not gonna... If you have the choice of having multiple replacement prosthetics, you're probably gonna get one that looks like the original part. If nothing else, just so that you have, like, fingers. You know, if you've grown up your whole life with digits, getting them back is helpful. And then it's like, well, what do I need? I need an arm for work. I need an arm that has, this feature or that feature. I need an arm that can help me in this situation I find myself in a lot. Like, I don't think, only because the way the text is worded and the fact that he has multiples and carries the social one to specific events. He doesn't go out into social one when he's around people. That's not what happens.
No.
He goes out with the social arm. Was doing it. Oh no, but I'm saying like he's not taking other people's reactions into consideration or anything. Like, he's not assuming anyone else going to have a problem with if he shows up with something else. So yeah. He's literally just living his life. He uses social arm when he's going to go be social and he wants to have fingers. And that's it. That's as far as it goes.
So you referred to in the notes ableism on the moon.
Yeah, now that we're done geeking out about prosthetics and how cool they are when we have the tech for them. Yeah, so there's some things where it's okay. So first of all, as a disclaimer, I am not missing any limbs. I do not have chronic. Well, that's not true. I do have some chronic things. None of my chronic things are physical disabilities in the way that losing a limb, and I say losing, not just missing, because I would assume, I could be wrong, I would assume there is a difference between just never having that thing in the first place versus being used to having it and then losing it.
Based on someone I know, they do appear to be very different things.
Yeah, so he had 2 arms, lost an arm. There are some, so he never gets any outright, he never gets any other than the one, as he puts it, very helpful friend who takes his arm off for him without him agreeing to that. He never really gets anybody who does kind of those things that happen to disabled people all the time here on Earth. He doesn't have people that try and take over what he's doing because, oh no, you don't have 2 arms. Let me just move your body. Let me move this thing that you were reaching for. Like, he doesn't get any of that. He doesn't get any of those, like, those microaggressions that come with appearing disabled in our
There's no
in our
parking,
society.
Therefore there's no problems with handicap parking because
right, like, no he doesn't have, like,
there's no parking because there's no cars.
Right. No one parks. It's fine. But yeah, but he doesn't really have, like, he doesn't have special treatment in a dehumanizing way. But he also doesn't really have special treatment in a, like, your prosthetic lets you do things other people can't kind of way. Like,
it's mostly useful to him. There's no one sitting there saying, hey, since you have this arm, can you do this thing for me? Like, that doesn't happen in the book. We can't say it never happened in this character's life. It's just not a thing in the text, and that text is all we have.
I would actually like to... So here's the thing that I look at with this book. And this is, I guess, kind of my, I don't know, like, hot take, if you want to call it that. I wouldn't. But
not for a book from the 60s.
No, not for a... No. I think it is very interesting that for a disabled character, we get to see him in kind of 3 different, I guess, 3 different parts of his personal navigation of this disability. So, we never see him pre-accident. That is all backstory, and like Robin said, we don't even get a lot of details. We just know that it happened and he's adjusted and he's fine. Essentially. But we see him, we're kind of introduced to him as a character where he is in full control and just has this arm and does these things and has tools and just functions, and it's great and it's wonderful and it's an asset and it gets him jobs that other people can't necessarily do or don't do as well, and he has this, like, this extra thing And it's just this part of him now. But it's so versatile. It's so much more versatile than like a hand. It's so much more than that. But then we also have this intermediary, and this is where the fact that he lost his arm specifically, I think, comes in. We have a couple of different conversations that he is having with people where there's this a comparison made at least once to, you know, losing this thing versus giving up. What if he were to give up this thing instead of having lost his arm? And it's not direct in a way where it's like, well, if you could have your arm back, what would you do? It's not like that. It's a comparison where he's comparing a trauma with another character. They're talking it through and they're trying to understand each other. And he has this internal thought of, no, if I could go back, I wouldn't lose my arm. There's very much this sense of like, no, this is a loss for him. He's adjusted and he's functioning, but he lost something and it impacts him every day. And he has that internal thought of, yeah, I understand how that would be awful. I would not risk my arm if I had the choice. And then, finally, we have that moment in the shuttle. Or, well, it's not really a shuttle. It's a glorified, giant tin can.
Shuttle-like.
It's shuttle-esque. It's probably similar to our current day shuttles, but...
Object. Space object.
Yes, that tin can that they're strapped in. But then we have him in that situation where he has been stripped of his devices. And not with consent, not with preparation. In fact, like Robin kind of alluded to, that has been taken from him in a moment where it could have been deadly. It could have been crucial that he had the laser cutter, I believe, that was on arm number 2 that he mentioned, to slice his way through that steel. He and the professor could have just died because somebody took his arm off of him. And he is aware of that fact, but you get this, the text does a really good job of, again, it doesn't put you, the reader, through his feelings, but like how he is feeling about it comes through, and he is upset and angry and frustrated and, oh my God, this takes forever. I can't do anything. I'm so helpless. I can't even turn around. I can't even reach across my body to like move. My companion might be dead. If we run out of oxygen, we're dead. If our rescuers don't know where we are, we're dead, and I should be able to do something. I literally should. That's not him putting something on himself. Like, he was equipped to be the person keeping them alive. And then some, helpful stranger decided to take his prosthetic. And I don't know. It's very interesting to me to watch him really be in those 3 dynamic places. As a character. So in general, we get to see him just running around living his life, but like, he's not just adjusted and fine. Like, this is a real trauma and a real injury and a real, it's just a real thing that he has to deal with and constantly be aware of.
Moving on to the wrap-up and ratings. For the gratuity rating for Marie Lyons, this
is interesting.
It is mild language on a severe topic.
With, like, 0 details.
Yes. Like, the bare bones minimum so that you know.
Robin?
Yes.
Question for you.
Yes.
Would you consider the content warnings just as written, generally, for this topic in our podcast to be severe content? Just the words.
Nope.
Then this is not. Then I would not consider this topic severe.
Okay.
Because we literally only get a single sentence statement. This thing happened to her. Done.
Yep.
So that's my argument. I think it's mild, and I think it is mild off screen.
Yeah. So I would say if this topic is a trigger for you to the degree that our show notes are triggering for you,
if you
very
read
sorry,
it,
and also that's how strong your reaction, aversion, past trauma would have to be in order for this to be anything other than mild.
Yeah, if just that word appearing in the wild with no context and nothing is a trigger, then this is a thing. If it's not, you're honestly probably fine.
Yep.
This book is so good about just really honestly protecting its readers. It really is. Without sacrificing story.
Yep. Then for the topic of racism,
again, super protected.
Yeah, so
this one's not mild, only because of consequences. Yeah, it's not even severe. And I'm gonna go ahead and say it's not even severe for similar reasons. There's you're given the basic bare bones framework of context in a couple sentences. There's no major descriptions. There's nothing. The character is in and out in less than a page.
Yeah, it's almost an entire book of we don't have that here and it doesn't come up and literally isn't in the book. Then moderate for a page or less.
Yeah.
And then Earth people, boy.
Just so you all know, Kohaku just came up and tried to type, and I picked her up, and now she's licking my hand and just sitting in my lap, but her upper body is supported by my hand. She's just hanging out like a lemur, almost.
Exciting.
She's in the episode this week. Anyways, talking about ableism.
Yes. So ableism and disability. Do you think the main scene with this is moderate or severe?
I'm not sure.
Moderate depictions. If it had gone badly, we would have a different trauma that would have been severe.
I think moderate depictions of a severe situation. I think this is definitely one of those where, I mean, again, like our other two topics.
In that situation, severe part wasn't the ableism. It was I would flip that. I think the severe part. I think the severe part was the ableism. Oh, okay. All right.
I think that the actual thing that happened.
Oh, good point.
Was portrayed in a very moderate way, but the specific ableism of someone else taking control of your body, I think that is a severe trauma.
Okay.
Only because I have people who have very similar, not precisely the same, disability as our main character, and somebody else inflicting decisions on you to that extent, even without the other situation, that's a major trauma in and of its own. But I do think the portrayal is moderate. I don't think it was portrayed in a severe way, but I do think the actual act of ableism was pretty severe. So I don't actually know how to rate this one. You guys, it's really hard when books are very good. It's hard when books do a good job, because then we can't just... But then we have to really think about how we're wording this, and so we apologize if it sounds like we're saying the same thing over and over. We promise we're not trying to do that.
And, we're here to assess this for you. It just gets tricky when we have to untangle, was this mild or handled with care? Or
yes.
That's the dance that's happening right now.
Or even, was this mild, handled with care, and also I'm sensitive to it? Yeah. Like, there's that too.
Yeah.
Or the opposite in this case, where I know I'm not sensitive to this thing, so would it have been a more severe scene if I was? This is the only topic of our three that has any kind of on-screen, like, descriptions associated with it. I will say that. It's the only one.
Yeah.
So, like, it's definitely not mild, because we do see what is happening to this character.
Let's go ahead and say severe, because the thing that was done was so invasive, assuming, and beyond the pale.
Yeah. And in context, potentially life-threatening. It was a thing.
Yep. So, leaving that on the gratuity rating, then for whether or not the traumas are integral, interchangeable, or irrelevant, for Marie Lyons, interchangeable.
Interchangeable. Agreed.
There's enough setup that I think other options would be worse decisions, but it is still interchangeable.
Yeah, and it's interchangeable, but also the particular thing chosen was set up to make sense very well. It was not shoehorned in at all. It was not gratuity at all. It was not gratuitous, at all. It was definitely just it made sense. But yeah, definitely interchangeable. There could have been other things. There could have been a lot of other things. We had some setup for other things even as well. Additional setup for other things.
Moving on to the racism, I think it's either interchangeable or irrelevant.
No.
So
I disagree. It's not irrelevant.
Okay, so my only thing, the only reason I'm saying
I realize that was a quick response, but
when the point is to, because it's not the only thing like this that gets pointed out as the boy howdy, Earth is not okay. I think in that sense, it could have been swapped out with something else. That is why I was saying interchangeable.
That is fair, but I would like to push for, so the trauma. The trauma itself, I would agree, would be interchangeable. I think the context for the trauma was definitely integral.
Oh, sure. It is integral that, the framing, everything on Luna was integral. The only thing related to it that was traumatic was interchangeable.
Yes.
So,
interchangeable?
Yes, the trauma is interchangeable. Taking out the backstory.
I mean, and even with the same setup and similar trauma, the actual events could have been interchangeable too.
Right, so that's why I was thinking possibly irrelevant for the trauma.
Yeah, I don't think the trauma is irrelevant. It's not even plot irrelevant. Like, it is, they talk about the fact that it was like, it was super, even if you stopped the story there, irrelevant. But the way the story continued on made it absolutely like something needed to have happened. Okay, that's fair.
That's
my argument.
Something needed to have happened. Interchangeable. Okay. Then for the ableism, it
is integral.
Yeah.
It's literally this character's day to day. Not necessarily the ableism itself, but just
also,
the life.
For, like, this is not a spoiler, this is the first chapter. We have a main character with a prosthetic. We have a main character with a missing limb and a prosthetic.
Yeah.
And
it's not like they had cool cataract surgery for a prosthesis. Like, no, they're missing an arm. Like, that's a thing.
That's a thing. And it's handled so well, people. If you skip to the descriptions and, like, I It's handled really well.
I would like to give a one-sentence summary of something I said in the topic, just in case you did skip.
Sure.
We see this character in 3 different modes. We see them functional, good to go, enjoying the benefits of having multiple prostheses. Prostheses? Prosthetics? Prostheses. It's a weird word to say. But he has multiple prosthetic arms, and we see him in his element thriving. We see that. We also see him contextualize and having conversations where we see him almost reflecting a little bit, not super deep, but reflecting a little bit on the fact that this is a loss. This was a major life change for him. And even though he's doing okay now, he would not have given up that arm on purpose, even if he knew what he would have now. Like, that arm, that mattered. That was a major trauma. And we also see him at one point without an arm. And just, it was not okay. And we see him in all 3 dynamics. It's a very dynamic, very just very good setup, and none of it is for show, and none of it is glorification of or that's not the right word. None of it is a feel-good story to make you go, oh, the disabled person. Like, no. It's just a thing that he lives with day to day, and we just are part of his day-to-day for a book, and so you just know about it. But it's present all the time. Which arm he has in place, which prosthetic he's using, is crucial to his function and his life, and he mentions it. It's not just a thing that happens, like, nope, it's a major part of the story.
So, moving on to, was the trauma treated with care? For Marie Lyons, yes. So much
absolutely.
care. So much care that attempting to discuss what happened is more traumatic than the literal text of what happened.
Yeah.
And that is not often that's
not often true for anything, but especially a topic this
especially topic
bad.
we picked for this podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, spending more than one sentence. Anyway, for the racism, yes, I think it was treated with care.
I think there's
at minimum enough.
I mean, you can't have treated it with less care without it have been written out completely.
Yeah.
Like, there's literally no other way to treat it with more care.
Yeah. Then the ableism and disability.
I think it was. I think it's treated enough. With care. I would have to defer. I almost want to either find out. I have a friend. I almost want to find out if he's read this book or recommend it to him and see what he thinks. But I also realize that that's pushing emotional labor on somebody else. But I feel like I personally don't have enough context to say if this is treated with enough or just with care. But as far as like from an abled reader's perspective, he's a very well-rounded, nuanced, dynamic character who is disabled.
Well, but in our main topic, I push back against the idea that he is disabled when he is on Luna, because he is in no way disabled. He merely does not have a bio arm on that side.
Well, no,
it's only when someone.
But he is disabled.
Okay.
Here's my logic behind this.
Okay.
I wear glasses. My eyes are awful.
Mm-hmm.
If I take off my glasses for reader context, for listener context, if I take my glasses off, in order to read 12-point font, the book has to be within 5 inches of my nose. Maybe closer, actually. My eyes are terrible. I don't stop being... Like, if we hadn't... Like, I mean, I guess technically that is a chronic disability, actually. Because if you take away my assisted device, if you take away my glasses, I am, I think, legally blind. Pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't stop being disabled when I put on my glasses.
Okay. All right.
And I realize that glasses are the socially accepted, non-stigmatized against assisted aid to need. Like, I'm not saying that I suffer from ableism all the time or ever because I need glasses. I am arguing that I don't stop needing glasses just because I put them on. I don't stop having awful eyes because I put on glasses.
Okay. All right.
That's my logic.
Again, if you've read this book, we are interested in what you think about this.
Yes, please.
We have the biases and perspectives that we have, and that's where we are. Okay, but
I'm not even sure. Okay, did we come to a consensus on that one?
I do think it. I'm gonna go.
It's
ahead
at least
and go with enough.
Yeah, because we don't have the perspective to definitively say just yes on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So enough.
Yeah.
Oh, point of view. Mannie.
The point of view. It's Mannie for everything.
This is our third book. Wait.
We've had a
fourth episode in our recording order, which is, fair to say, not the same order that you guys are going to hear this. It's the fourth episode in our recording schedule, where we have had a single character perspective.
Yeah, we're recording this right after recording Hunger Games is what happened. And
Hunger Games was right after Coraline.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
No. And the Hork Bahir oh no, that had multiple perspectives. Yeah, okay, it's fine. But yeah, we had like 5 recordings in a row.
Where it was like single person this whole time.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess Hork Bahir was last week, and so that broke it up a little bit. But we've had a pretty good run of single character perspectives for a recording schedule.
Yeah. But fortunately, you as our listeners are not going to experience them in that order, so it's okay.
Yep. But yeah, it's Mannie for everything, which is
makes sense.
Helpful when it's his topics and a little less helpful when it's Marie Lyons because he didn't meet her ever.
True.
Yeah.
It is very much set up. I actually really like that it's just Mannie. I think it makes sense, only because...
Oh, sure, it does. I'm just saying it's not as helpful for our podcast.
Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying it's a bad decision for the book. It just makes the podcast trickier.
This is very different from Hunger Games and Coraline, where we're not watching events happen in real time. Mannie is the main character, but he's also the narrator. He's talking about events in his past.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was from anybody else's perspective, that would be a jarring shift in book tone. If nothing else, that would have been a very difficult to read and kind of parse through. It makes sense that it's all him, but it is all him.
Do you have an aspiring writer tip?
I mean, I feel like I've given the tip I want to give before, which isn't ideal.
Okay, I think I have one.
Okay.
You don't need to walk around labeling the races of all your characters.
Yeah.
Hello, most fiction ever.
Or at least you don't need to label only the non-white characters.
Oh yeah.
Let's go that far and just say, hey, presumed Caucasian ethnicity.
Stop doing the presumed Caucasian thing.
Don't just stop that as a reader, stop it as a writer. Please.
Yes, please.
This book is so good. It's so good with that. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah. And can I just say, it's good at that, and it's also not irrelevant to the story. This is not a backlog. This is not like 20 years later, oh yeah, that person was completely a person of color. That person was definitely of this descent. Like, no, it's explicit in the text, and also it's unassumed.
Yep.
It's cool.
All right. What was your favorite non-traumatic thing about the book?
Oh my gosh. There's so many. Okay. This is not a spoiler, I promise. It's in like the first, 10 pages. I like Mike's jokes.
Oh, yeah.
I particularly like his inquiry and study into the nature of humor. And I like how they went about it. I like how Mannie was going to teach him. I like the setup. I think it's well executed. I think it was funny to read. I liked that. I like his. Okay, I will say, so when I was younger reading this, I already kind of knew these categories, but this book did a really good job of stark contrastly outlining for young me the difference between funny never, funny once, and funny always.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically in that one scene with Wyo, it also outlined that something can be funny once or funny never to one person and funny always to someone else, and it's contextual. And I like how it's broken down, and I like Mike's jokes as a whole concept.
All right.
It's my favorite.
My favorite non-traumatic thing, I really liked the really cool form of polyamory invented for this book. That's the line marriage. It's really cool. I am aware that it would be problematic and has the potential to be pedophilic or phebophilic if it were to happen in real life on Earth, because people are terrible. But as it is depicted in this book, it's this really cool thing that is a way to sustain and take care of people over generations in a situation where they are not allowed to make their own laws.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I honestly, I really like all of the... I know I'm tacking onto yours. Yours is also one of my favorites. I like the variety of polyamory.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's arguing that one is better or worse, or there's
several people saying, stop trying to act... Two Earth people stopped trying to act like one is better or worse. What are you doing?
Yeah.
The bit where Mannie has to explain what a simple divorce would be. So if a woman decides to divorce one of her two husbands...
Let's say she only has two. Let's say she only has two to keep it nice and contained. And the guy is like, that's not simple. Oh no. It's almost comical to read. But you're not laughing at the custom. You're totally laughing at the person who doesn't get it, and it's just like, not in like a mean way, but just like, it's good. It's well written.
Yep. All right. That's it. Thank you so much for joining us. I liked this book way more than I thought I was going to. And I feel like we keep picking books that handle stuff well, and I know that streak isn't going to go forever.
Oh, we've got some in the pipeline that do not.
Yay. Well, that'll be a thing. Thank you so much for joining us this fortnight, and we will see you later. All music used in this podcast was created by Nicole as Heartbeat Art Co. and is used with permission.
You can follow us on Twitter at Books That Burn, all one word.
You can email us with questions, comments, or book recommendations at booksthatburn@yahoo.com.
Support us on patreon.com/booksthatburn. All patrons get access to our upcoming book list and receive a one-time shout-out.
You can leave us an iTunes review. This helps people to find the show.
And find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks.